Hi, I'm Ozzie Hall. Let's revisit some American history. In 1776, the Declaration of Independence was published, and Americans declared themselves independent of the British. And we're given a version of history that paints a picture of great patriots, the founding fathers, the establishment of the United States Constitution, and the heroic American Revolutionary War. But let's delve into it and look at it just a little closer. In 1772, the British court issued an opinion by Lord Mansfield, the Chief Justice, that made slavery illegal on British soil in the Summerset case. At the time, the 13 American colonies were considered British soil. So this ruling and its decision regarding slavery being illegal was imminent to be enforced in the American colonies. Let's look a little further into it. The state of Florida was not part of the 13 colonies. East Florida was under the control of the Spanish, and West Florida was under control of the French. The East Florida was largely populated by maroons or escaped African slaves who had escaped when the ships came over, and Blacks who had escaped from Georgia and South Carolina. So you had runaway slaves, escapees from South Carolina and in Georgia. And you also had Black freedmen from Spain, from the Spanish colonies that were in Florida, in East Florida, and had been there since the early 1500s. And so in terms of when you look at what was going on, there was a war going on the southern border of the American colonies. And that war was largely about slavery because Blacks in Georgia and South Carolina were in unrest in terms of trying to end slavery. And they joined themselves on with the Seminole Indians, who resided primarily in Florida at the time, who had migrated there. And so what you have is a war on the southern border, and you have Britain financing this war and providing military support to help the Americans. And then in addition, in the north, in Canada, the French had control, and there was conflict there as well. So in terms of, if we look at when the American Revolutionary War took place, and we hear about the Tea Party and the protests against taxation, the British government was attempting to recover funds it had expended in order to support America's security, the 13 colonies' security. So when you look at what was going on, there was so much unrest and conflict, and then England had already passed an earlier law to end slavery, and it was now being enforced by the courts. The end of slavery was imminent in the Americas, in the North and the South, in the 13 colonies, had a strategic interest in retaining and maintaining slavery. The Southern cotton plantation owners shipped their cotton to northern textile mills, and sugar cane was produced and shipped to northern factories to produce rum. And when you began to look at the economics of what was going on there, America had a strategic interest in maintaining slavery. And the first 10 of the first 12 US presidents were slave owners. And so when you began to look at this situation, and this against this backdrop, the Supreme Court in 1857 in the Dred Scott decision said that blacks had no rights which whites were bound to respect, and that the founding fathers did not contemplate or intend that black people would be American citizens. So when the Declaration of Independence was written, that said all men, when the US Constitution was written, there was never an intent for black people to be American citizens. Black people became American citizens by fighting and struggling to end slavery, by agitating and engaging in activity to bring about change. And every inch of ground that blacks have received has been as a result of struggle, and has been as a result of black protest and black participation in forcing change to come about. And this has been consistently the history of black people in this country. And so when we go back and look at this story about America, and we hear about the efforts to end culture, to end this critical race theory concept in public schools, what we're talking about is they don't want us to talk about this history. They don't want us to talk about the facts and reach conclusions and understanding of what actually happened. They just want us to repeat the lies that they've told us. They just want us to repeat and be programmed by the lies that they've presented to us about the founding of this country. And so I'm making this video for you to share, for you to be able to understand what happened and to be able to recognize the context in which the American Revolution took place and the birth of this country was implemented in order to preserve the institution of slavery. And so that is what happened.